Here's the next one. Perfect your value proposition. This again seems so straightforward, but I know it can get so tricky, go in many different directions all over the place. It's a moving target for most startups. Ryan, start us off by explaining what is a value proposition.
The value proposition is the information you can provide to somebody so that they can understand how they benefit from it. Far too often, what we see instead are founders telling us, here's what we do. Here's what we do. Here's what we do. Right? I don't care what you do. What does it do for me? How does it help me? Right? People don't buy products. They buy solutions to their problems, right? Let's get a little more lofty. They buy the rungs on the ladder to their dreams, right? We're always trying to accomplish something else. Now, the dreams could be really small. It could be like, oh, we need to replace Tom in HR, so let's find a tool, right? That's a dream, right? We still need to get that done. But people want to understand how their lives change, how their day will be different once they've engaged with us. This is what a value proposition needs to clearly and concisely explain to somebody, right? They don't want to know what we do. They don't want to know how it happens necessarily. As we go back to my example from earlier, let's take a bad one. We have a video editing tool. Okay, great. Be more specific. We help founders edit videos. Okay, that's better because now we understand a little bit more about it, right? At least you didn't say business this time. We help founders spend less time editing videos so they can focus on growing their business, right?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Now we've got something.
Yeah.
Right? Now we're touching on multiple aspects. We're giving a little bit of what we do, but we're really talking about saving time. But saving time may not be the goal. The goal behind the goal is so we can grow our business, right? And so this is what we want to help people understand. We want to get in their heads. This is why we have to know the customer. In order to understand why our product is relevant to them, we have to understand where they're going. We don't know where they're going. We can't give directions. We can't pretend to be relevant unless we understand the destination. The minute we understand the destination, the value prop becomes really simple because it should feed directly into either fully achieving or empowering that decision.
I learned from an advertising course a long time ago that you can communicate on multiple tiers, and it's like layers of an onion, like the deeper you go. And first it was features, and they said everybody communicates features. Like our stuff edits video, like what you said. And then you can go a little deeper, advantage, our stuff does it a little better. But then there are benefits, so you can focus on your business, so you can sleep better at night. But then they pushed it even further. And I think this is what you said about dreams. We called it ultimate benefits, so you can put your head on your pillow at night and know that you're secure. And that may not necessarily be the thing that you lead with, but eventually if you can get to the core that your value proposition speaks to these ultimate benefits, these dreams, then you've got something that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. If you know, for example, that video editing is keeping your customers up at night, either literally or figuratively, like they are worried about it, or they're actually staying up half the night editing video, that line would be perfect, right? But this is why we got to know the customer. We have to know what are their biggest aspirations, what are their biggest fears in relation to the thing that we provide, right? Once we know that, this becomes a lot easier.
And tell us, Ryan, when you say perfect value proposition, and I know you're using it as a verb, perfect your value proposition, because getting to the perfect value proposition, that's a moving target. What do you mean by perfecting a value proposition?
Sure. So I don't mean don't have a perfect one. We don't need perfect. We need clear, to be clear, right? We don't need. So in order to perfect or move towards perfection, couple steps, right? Like the first one is just define the problem that you solve and be specific, right? So we already covered this one. This is, we help founders spend less time editing videos so they can focus on growing their business. Cool, right? Use clear, concise language. Nobody wants buzzwords. Nobody wants jargon unless they do, right? Unless you're selling to the military, you better have some acronyms in there. You better use some jargon. They live on this stuff, right? They live on it. The vast majority of people, we don't like it, we don't want it, avoid it. Try to do it as though you're explaining it to a friend. Sometimes people will say like your grandma or your 5-year-old. Both of those are a little bit out of too far into left field for me. Say it like you're explaining to a friend, right? Not like you're pitching a customer, but like you want your friend who you're out to lunch with to understand what you do. Start there. We can always get more specific. We can always get more pointed. We can always use more kind of audience-specific language, but start by doing it as you're explaining to a friend, right? And then test and iterate. Just get out there. This goes back to talking to the customers. See what resonates. Test it on social, right? Throw up a tweet that uses one type of language one week and use something different the next week. You want to put a little bit of money behind it? Run some paid search ads just to test click-through. We don't need anything more than that. Doesn't even have to be a real page behind it. Could be, thanks for participating in my marketing test when they land there. I don't care. All I want to know is if I use these 5 words versus those 5 words, which one resonates with my audience more, right? It doesn't have to be a complicated process. I think, in fact, that is the key to a great value prop is that it does become very simple. And that's the difficulty, simplifying it.
I agree 100%. But you said the magic word, key audience. So this is where I'm going to tie value proposition. And a lot of times they call it unique value proposition, because if you're saying something that everybody else says, then that's not going to be very helpful. But if it's a unique value proposition, how does it tie to the ICP?
Sure. Easy. Look, three questions you can ask yourself to make sure that this happens. Okay. What problem does this solve? Who is it for? And why is it better than alternatives? This starts to really help you narrow down to make sure, and this is another way of actually refining the ICP. So this is what's beautiful about all these exercises, is that they feed each other, right? So as we start to play this game, as we start to look at those things, we're going to find one of two things. This may really, really suit the ICP, but we might go, actually, what we're discovering is that the value that we provide isn't for who we thought our initial ICP was. Our video editing tool really does help people save a ton of time. But it turns out founders weren't spending that much time on video editing. But there's this other population of people, there's this whole new creator economy who aren't calling themselves founders, but who spend a lot of time editing video. And it turns out that's it. So part of your value prop is also discovering who you're going to be most valuable to. In the beginning, we're guessing. Right, we're guessing. I think we will be really valuable to founders who edit video. You might be. You might find out you're even more valuable to creators who do nothing but edit video, well, record and edit.
And you're saying, you're advocating for an approach that it's okay to iterate. Like, you don't have to nail it. Again, it's back to that perfection. It's okay. Like, how many times do you think a startup, and this is a big question for you, Jacob, as well, your experience trying to hone your unique value proposition, how many iterations should we expect to go through on this, Ryan?
As many as it takes, but like, I think the expectation needs to be that, like, do you know how many times I've gotten stuff right on the whiteboard? Unless I'm explaining math to my 8th grader, it's very, very rarely. And even then, I probably only have about a 75% hit rate. So you just have to expect that everything that we start with is a best guess, and then be very careful. This is one of those things that I did early on. You make that best guess. And then, because you're trying to prove yourself right to an audience of one, yourself, you go out and you try to find evidence that supports that perspective, instead of just saying, okay, here's my guess. Now I'm going to go see how it compares to reality, and just accepting whatever the reality is. I think this is really hard as founders, because there's a lot of ego tied up in this. There's a lot of, we're very passionate about what we think and what we do. When we find out that we're wrong, we don't always handle it that well, right? So just don't pin any ego to these guesses in the beginning. Just understand them for what they are. They are guesses. They are just a jumping off point. They're a starting point. You got to start somewhere, and this is it.
This is perfect. And Jacob, let me get back to you, but I wanted to double click on what you said, Ryan, because I'll share a story, and it was embarrassing, but it was probably one of the best stories, painful stories. Yeah, it was. The mom test talks about how to handle bad news, right? And it's great. I had a video game company, and I thought my ICP were going to be gamers. I hacked a community. I said, I'm going to get into the gaming community, and I started talking about it, developing relationships. I did all the stuff that I'm supposed to do. And then nobody's responding to me. And I was like, what is going on? I was so frustrated. And finally, someone had the guts, the courage, or they were just having a really bad day, to basically put it between the eyes and say, Ed, we hate games like you have. Like, we hate your games. Like, we don't play games like that. And I stopped and I went, wait a sec, there's a difference. And this person explained to me, and I said, oh my goodness, I've got the wrong customer profile, and I've got the totally wrong message for these individuals that I'm trying to target, or I think I'm trying to target. And so I got an education, and therefore my ICP and my UVP start to adjust. And now I know exactly who I need to talk to, which has been a godsend, saved me a lot of heartache and a lot of money that I would have spent in the past. Jacob, what's it been like for you? What's your journey here?
Man, it is the amount of times that I've changed my messaging is astronomical. And to Ryan's point of just constantly testing and iterating, it's been a, whether it's testing social media ads or, there's just constant iteration. And there was a lot of fear at the beginning of like, oh, I don't want to be rejected. And so you don't put out as much stuff as you really need to. Whereas now that I've been doing this for a couple of years, or anchor coaching for a couple of years, I crave that feedback. Like that's the transforming part, at least for me, of like, I need people to tell me if this is the worst thing you've ever heard of. And I need to know now so that I don't waste any more time on it. But as a kind of an example of, when I started shifting my messaging or narrowing down my niche, I thought it was going to be tech founders. And I thought the big pulling point was reducing burnout and pursuing Christian tech founders to help them reduce burnout. Well, that sounds great, but using tech founder is a particular term that a certain demographic pops up, and they tend to be people who are just starting. And with that came, if you're wanting to reduce burnout, sure, all of them wanted to reduce burnout, but they had no budget or anything. So it's like, okay, great, I hit my target audience, but this isn't going to work from a financial standpoint. So having to change your messaging to fit a target audience that you can not only get to in a message that works, but also funds your economic engine is really important.
Sometimes it definitely doesn't work out. Ryan, here's the last question on this topic, because I've heard people say it's okay to polarize with your value proposition, to clearly say who are the ones that want this and then ignore everybody else. And then some people say, you need to be contrarian, maybe a little controversial in the way that you communicate your value proposition. What are your thoughts on how do we improve or hack our way into making it more effective for testing or just effective in general?
Yeah, I think this gets down into some really specific messaging points where we really understand who our demographic is and who they're not. If you're selling into a population that has polarity, right? Like PHP is the only way, right? Or no, .NET's the right? Whatever it might be, then that polarity will help you, right? But this goes back to observe the behaviors. Look at what they're already saying. Look at how they think about it. Look at how they talk about it. Do they use polarizing language? Do they have polar opinions? If so, oftentimes we have to appeal to that. I don't think that by nature there is anything that says, yes, you will always be better to include controversy in your value proposition. I don't know that value props need to be controversial by nature. I don't think they do. I think there are times when controversy can be used to garner attention, but I'm not sure that unless you are forming a militia, that controversy has to be part of your value prop.
Well, I can say a lot of people get very opportunistic. I don't know if it's healthy or not, and say my value proposition is to stir controversy, but we can leave that one alone. I like your diplomatic answer. It really depends on context. And let's just say the entire market is going left and you're going to stand out by going right. Well, maybe you can put in your value proposition, hey, when everyone's going left, we go right. These are just some things to think about.
Yep.
And to Ryan's point, the big thing there was know your customer, know whether or not they're going to respond to you being contrarian or having controversy.
That's
100%.
a great point.